Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Raw Prospect Podcast. Today's episode 221 for our March Madness bracket preview. We're going to be going through each and every game on the bracket. It's the best time of year for college basketball and really just any out of any sport in general. It's up there on the list in terms of favorite sporting event over a period of time. And we'll be going through every single matchup, all the in breaking down our final four picks as well. So if you interested in that type of content, like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and joining me from Houston, Texas, is Stacking himself, Mr. McElwain. How you doing?
It's the best time of year. Does everybody see this right here? Just that beautifully blank March Madness bracket. 68 teams in the field. There were some surprises through the ups and downs. Over 200,000 minutes of college basketball on TV got us to this particular point in time. And now your season's on the line. One game, win or go home. Every single round, every single game for the right to play in Phoenix in the Final Four, for the right to play for the ultimate goal, a national championship. Before we get into, first, here's how this is going to work. We're going to go region by region. Within each region, we will go game by game, round by round. So we'll do all of the first round, all the second round, the Sweet 16, and the Elite Eight, and then we will stop. And then we'll go to the next region. But we will be going from the East region at the top right of your bracket, where the UConn Huskies, the number one overall seed in the tournament, are the number one seed in that region. Then we will go to the top right of your bracket to the South region, where the number two overall seed, Houston, finds itself. Then we will zigzag down to the bottom left of the bracket, and we will do the West region, where the number four overall number one seed, North Carolina, finds itself. And then finally, to complete the zigzag, we'll go to the Midwest on the bottom right, where Purdue, the third overall number one seed, finds itself. And then after we do each region, we'll circle back, we'll make our final four picks, and declare our national champion. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, let's get into it, man.
All right. Before we got into it, though, I did have a couple things I want to say about the selection process and the way that this particular bracket is set up. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. I'm not going to go on a huge rant here, but I do have some gripes. Now, before I say anything, let me just say that this job right here, to make a bracket according to the bracket principles that they have to follow, is not easy. I'm not saying by any means that it's an easy job. You have these conference tournaments that are ever changing, leading up right into the selection show. The Big Ten tournament final, that championship game went final 30 minutes before the bracket was revealed. And so this committee is trying to watch games. They're trying to alter the bracket based on the games, but they only have so much time and they're on a time crunch. And when you have to follow all these bracket principles, if you change one thing, it could be a ripple effect and you might have to change a ton of other things, right? Because you can't just place Houston in the same region as Texas and match those teams up in the second round if that were to be the case. There are certain principles that they have to follow. So it's not an easy thing to do. But I had one big gripe. I had more gripes than this, but I'm just going to get into this one for now because it was by far the biggest. How in the hell does the Big East only get 3 bids to the tournament? That makes 0 sense. And here's why. I understand you can make the argument that the Big East was a top-heavy region, and their best teams, the teams that we think have the best chance to win the national championship, UConn, Marquette, and Creighton, right? Those 3 teams, they got in, deservedly so. And they're all on top 3 seed lines. Marquette's a 2, UConn's the number 1 overall, and Creighton's a 3. All very good, all Final Four threats, right? However, I have a problem that the Big East, the number 2 overall rated conference, according to KenPom, just behind the Big 12, only got 3 teams in, when the ACC got 5 teams in. And the Pac 12, a conference that hasn't been very good this year, got 4 teams in. Now, I understand there were some bid stealers during conference tournament week. You think about Oregon winning the Pac 12 tournament. You think about NC State winning the ACC tournament. You think about Drake taking down Indiana State to win the Missouri Valley. And Indiana State didn't get in, and I have a problem with that as well, but that's not what we're here to talk about. The point is, though, and that makes it difficult, that shrunk the amount of bids that were available. Nobody expected NC State to come out of nowhere and win 5 games in 5 days to get an 11 seed. And nobody really expected Oregon to do what they did and beat Arizona. However, just listen to this. This is my case for the Big East. As I mentioned, they were the second strongest conference according to KenPom. That's number 1. 4.82 quad 1 wins per team in the conference, top to bottom. 4.82 quad 1 wins per team, top to bottom, on average. That's the most of any conference. It's not particularly close. They had 6 teams with 5 or more quad 1 wins. 6 teams with 5 or more quad 1 wins. You have teams in this field that barely have a quad 1 win at all. Dayton's a 7 seed. They have 1 quad 1 win. I don't understand it. 9 combined quad 1 and quad 2 wins per team on average. That's the most of any conference. 14 quad 1 games played per team. That's the most of any conference. 20 quad 1 and quad 2 games played per team. That's the most of any conference. I don't understand it. I understand St. John's missing it because even though it's Rick Pitino, they kind of played a cupcake schedule down the stretch. 4 of their 6 straight wins in that 6-game winning streak came against Georgetown and DePaul, 2 of the worst teams in America. And those teams, you can make the argument, did drag down the conference just a little bit. But when you look at some of the teams that got in, particularly teams like Virginia, Florida Atlantic, who lost to Temple in the American
AAC.
tournament,
Yeah,
in
the
the
AAC
tournament, and they have 2 quad 4 losses, by the way. And some of these other teams, right? Dayton only have like 1 or 2 wins against the field as a whole. Only 1 quad 1 win. I'm not saying Dayton shouldn't have made the tournament. I really like Dayton. But if it's all based on metrics and it's all based on your resume, like they tell us every year, how in the hell did Seton Hall miss the tournament? For the first time in the 45-year history of the Big East, that's a long-ass time, right? 45-year history of this conference, it was the first time a team went at least 5 games over 500 in conference play and missed the tournament. Seton Hall this year. They went 13-7 in the second best conference, according to one of the main metrics that this committee subscribes to. That's KenPom. They went 5-8 in quad 1, 9-11 in quads 1 and 2. That is really respectable. They had more wins in quad 1 and quad 2 than Texas did. They had over quadruple the amount of wins in quad 1 and quad 2 that Virginia did, who got in the first four. They had a win over UConn, who's the number one team in this field, the defending national champion. They beat them by 15 points. They had a win over Marquette. They beat Providence. They beat St. John's twice, who was another team on the bubble. And they had no bad losses. Then you had Providence, who won 21 games in this league. They went 500 in the best league in America, or the second best league in America, excuse me. They beat Wisconsin, who's a 5 seed. They beat Marquette, who's a 2 seed. They had 2 wins over Creighton, who's a 3 seed. They swept Creighton, and they had 0 losses outside of quad 1 and quad 2. Finally, and then I'll shut up. Michigan State, who's a 9 seed in this tournament. Dayton, who's a 7 seed in this tournament. And Florida Atlantic, who's an 8 seed in this tournament, but I understand them a little bit more because of what they did last year. Those 3 teams combined had 3 top 20 wins, and each of them had at least 2 sub-75 losses, while Providence, by itself, had more top 20 wins with 4 and 0 sub-75 losses. It makes no sense to me, but I don't know. I'm just happy that March Madness is here, and we get to talk about one of my favorite sports, college basketball.
Yeah, and to add on to your point, I mean, you could have made the argument Seton Hall could have been in the 5 line. I mean, they were that good.
Yeah, Shaheen Holloway, you know where he came from? St. Peter's. You know what St. Peter's did a couple years ago?
First 16 of
I just feel so bad for those coaches, number one, and this conference. I mean, think about the Big East tournament. It's the most electric conference tournament that there is.
Yeah.
It's played on one of the biggest stages, not only in the U.S., but in the world, in Madison Square Garden. And you have some historical teams with like legitimate history in this conference. And I don't know. That's my biggest gripe. I had some problems with the way that some of these Mountain West teams were seeded. I think some of them were massively underseeded, but I kind of understand it. And then there are a couple nicks and knacks here and there, teams that I think got overseeded, teams that I think got underseeded, but we could argue about that all day, and we're not here to do that today. So there's my rant. I had it in the title, Big East rant. There it is. And I'm not even like one of these Big East super fans. I just don't know how what I just laid out makes any sense in the world. But it's okay. College football, their selection process has also not made any sense in the world. So, look, it's not going to be perfect. People want to expand. Some people want to expand this tournament. I have no idea why. Leave it like it is. It's perfect how it is. But with all that being said, let's just get into this. Enough of that. Let's start in the East at the top right of the region. Top right of your bracket, excuse me. We're going to go kind of in like mini pods here. So I'm going to make my predictions for the 116, the 8-9, the 5-12, and the 4-13, the first 4 games. And then you're going to make your predictions for those first 4 games. Okay?
All right. Sounds good.
UConn against Stetson. Stetson's here for the first time in their history. Congratulations to them. Unfortunately, they're going to be the sacrificial lamb here. There has to be some wood that hits the buzzsaw. They're going to be the wood that hits the buzzsaw here. UConn's going to roll them. Could be close in the first half. Stetson does have some guards that can score the ball. Julian Blackman, I've watched some of him. He's legit. And if he gets going, they could keep this close for a little bit. But unless you get Donovan Clingan in foul trouble, UConn just has too many scoring sources. Their guard play is fantastic, and they can beat you both with elite offense and elite defense. I have UConn winning that game, obviously, as the number one overall, as they begin their quest to repeat something no team has done since the 2007 Florida Gators. FAU and Northwestern, I'm super excited to see the guard matchup in this game. Boo Buie for Northwestern, electric. He can get going, and when he gets going, it makes this Northwestern team really dangerous. He's one of those guys, along with a select few in college basketball, that can put up 35, 40. And that's what makes Northwestern dangerous. They're a little bit better defensively than Florida Atlantic, and that does worry me. If they can get up and pressure Jonell Davis and Elijah Martin, that could cause some trouble for Florida Atlantic. This Florida Atlantic team isn't really as disruptive defensively as they were last year, even though they have a lot of the same team back. However, I just think Florida Atlantic has more guys that can go and get you a bucket, and Vlad Golden has been playing really well as of late. As long as he stays out of foul trouble, I don't think Northwestern has a big that can match up with him on the interior. I do like Florida Atlantic to squeeze by Northwestern, although I do think it'll be a game that comes down to the wire. San Diego State and UAB. San Diego, if you notice, actually in this East region, 3 out of the 4 teams that made the Final Four last year are in this region: UConn, FAU, and San Diego State, which is interesting. And they're actually all in the same little pod here. I think San Diego State is just too mature, too experienced, too big, and solid defensively for a team like UAB to beat them. However, I do think UAB could keep this game close. The worry with San Diego State is they've had games this year and they've had games in the past where they can go kind of like some of the Virginia teams of old, 5-6 minutes without scoring a field goal. And that worries me a little bit. But I do think Micah Parrish, Darian Trammell, who was here last year, experienced in these situations, and Jadon Lee, who's a 6'9" forward who I think should be an All-American and can do it all down low as an interior presence. I don't think UAB has the personnel to match up with that. I think San Diego State is fairly upset-proof in the first round just because of the way that they defend. But you never know. I'll take San Diego State in that matchup. And then Auburn against Yale. Look, man, I think Auburn got royally screwed here. They're the only team in this field, top 10 in both offensive and defensive efficiency, according to Ken Palm. They played in one of the toughest leagues in America, and they just won their conference tournament, and they're a 4 seed. It makes no sense to me. They're top 5 on both Ken Palm and on Torvik. They're a 4 seed. I think they're underseeded. I think Kentucky should have been a 4, and Auburn should have been a 3. That's just my opinion. But I think Yale's dangerous. Yale, the Ivy League has had success in past tournaments, number one. Yale is experienced. They don't turn the ball over. And one of the things that Auburn prides itself on with their defense and their ball pressure under Bruce Pearl is turning teams over and getting out in the fast break. Yale has 5 guys who average in double digits scoring, which worries me. And they take really good care of the ball. Under 10 turnovers per game. They're like top 10 in the country in not turning the ball over. I really want to pick Auburn here. However, this matchup worries me. As I said, I think they got royally screwed. I'd really like to see a matchup between San Diego State and Auburn. But I think I got to go with the 13-4 upset here. Yale out of the Ivy League gets it done. That's just my gut feeling on this. With their experience, play smart basketball, they're well coached, and they have guys that can score the basketball. They're not going to succumb to the pressure of Auburn's defense. I like Yale to advance to play San Diego State.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that pick. I'll go backwards here, and just because it's fresh in our mind, Auburn, Yale. I think to me, I'm gonna lean with Auburn here. Just in terms of like the possession battle, I think Auburn will dominate the glass. I think the athleticism and, as you said, the ball pressure, I think will lead to, I guess, worse decisions with the basketball. But I do think Yale will hang around. I think um, it could be late in the second half where it's a pretty tight ball game. San Diego State and UAB, as you said, I think San Diego State, their defensive presence, Jadon Lee is a bucket down low. Really is polished in terms of post moves, athleticism. I think San Diego State will win that game pretty handedly, and personally. FAU and Northwestern. I think I'm going to go with Northwestern. Just because I think what's his name?
Boo Booey.
Boo Booey. Yeah, I didn't want to say it wrong. Um, he's a bucket getter, man, in the pick and roll. And for FAU, they play primarily drop coverage, and I just worry about that. Just in terms of if he gets hot and FAU's playing drop coverage, what's their counter? Will they be able to step up and play high or trap or have those adjustments? I think I love their coach, and he showed last year that he had the the schemes to be able to make that work. But I'm going to go with the upset here. And then UConn and Stetson, pretty simple. I'm just going with UConn.
Okay, let's go to the bottom half of the East region, and we'll kind of zigzag here. Let's start with you first. Go BYU, Duquesne, Illinois, Morehead State, Washington State, Drake, and Iowa State, South Dakota State.
Okay, so BYU Duquesne, I think this is where I'm going to have my first upset of my bracket. No particular reason other than I just think Duquesne is one of those 11 seeds that I think is playing at a really high level at the moment. As I haven't watched them play at all. I've watched BYU, but um, Duquesne, as much as I've read up on them, they're a team that's on fire right now, and they shoot the three ball well as well. Um, Next game, Morehead State and Illinois. Illinois is one of the best offensive teams in the country, and I think in a March Madness tournament game, when you get a style of team like that, it's it's about whether their high powered offense will translate into a more physical, more high pressure environment, and I think it will. I think Illinois, out of the teams in this draw, I think they would be a really interesting matchup to see play UConn eventually if they do get there. Um, then Washington State and Drake. I'm going with Drake there, just gut feeling. And then Iowa State and South Dakota State. I'm going with Iowa State. I'm really impressed with how they've been playing lately, and their huge win over Houston. I mean, that's no small feat. That's legit.
So I'll do similar to you, and I'll kind of work backwards here. Iowa State and South Dakota State. I'll take Iowa State here. They won the Big 12 tournament. They blew out Houston 69-41, only the second time that Houston's really been blown out this year. The only other time was when they went to Allen Fieldhouse and Kansas just shot the hell out of the ball. I really like this Iowa State team now. I don't know if that performance is what we're going to get exactly in this tournament, because on the NCAA tournament, it's on a game-to-game basis. But look, They double team you. They're physical defensively. They swarm the ball. They have a 25.7% defensive turnover percentage, which is second nationally. They can sink you in a matter of minutes with the amount of turnovers they force and how they get out in transition. They have the guard play to be successful. They have the coach to be successful. Tannen Lipsey is a badass. Keshawn Gilbert was an underrated transfer pickup. They were finished. They were picked to finish 7th in the Big 12 preseason poll because this roster, it doesn't have overwhelming size, and people didn't really think they had legit NBA talent, but I think they do. And TJ Otzelberger is a hell of a coach. So I'll take Iowa State. Washington State and Drake, I think this could potentially be the best first round game, not only in this region, but in the entire tournament. If you haven't watched Drake out of the Missouri Valley, they are, I think, possibly the most dangerous 10 seed in this tournament. And I don't know that it's close. Tucker DeVree is legit. That guy can score. He's got size. I think he'll be the best player on the floor in this game. Look, Washington State's well coached. They've got good players. They've had a really solid year. They're here in the tournament for the first time in a long time. So congratulations to them. I think they got screwed with the matchup here. Drake's got guys that can score. They got guys that can shoot. Tucker DeVree will be the best player on the floor. And I think Drake will win. Illinois, coming off the Big Ten championship run, which they played really, really well. I like them to beat Morehead State. The bottom line is their top 3 guys are playing really well right now. Terrence Shannon Jr. is one of the better players in this field when he's going. And you add in Marcus Domass, you add in Coleman Hawkins, who can really knock down the 3. I think they'll be too much for Morehead State. And then I actually like BYU to beat Duquesne. Duquesne had a great run. And look, they do some really good things. I just think they're a little undersized, and I think BYU is dangerous with the way that they spread you out and can shoot the ball. They can really shoot it. And so I'm going to go BYU, although Duquesne could, you never know, could keep that close. So with all that being said, now we have to circle back around to our second round matchups in the East. For me, UConn against FAU. I'll go UConn. Again, I think these are 2 of the teams that were in the Final Four last year. I think the only way you can really get UConn into trouble is if you get Donovan Clingan into foul trouble. But I just think Cam Spencer, the way he shot the ball from 3 all year, made big shots, can create his own. Tristan Newton can take over a game and is great on both ends. Steph Castle, I still think is going to be a lottery pick out on the wing. I just think they have too many weapons, and I think they will get to the Sweet 16 and beat FAU, a team that's not very good defensively this year. That's just the bottom line. And you mentioned it. Like, I think Boo Buie could absolutely pick apart this defense a little bit. And then I had San Diego State against Yale. I do think Yale has enough to catch Auburn off guard. I don't think they have enough, though. I don't think they're deep enough to win 2 games in a row, 2 grinded out games in a row. You're going to have to go against hounding defense in Auburn and then another physical hounding defense in San Diego State. Love the Ivy League. They deserve their respect. You saw what Princeton did, what was it, a year or 2 ago? But I just think that San Diego State will win that game with their experience. And, you know, Brian Dutcher is a fantastic coach come tournament time. I think they will get to the Sweet 16 to play UConn. And then for my bottom half, I actually have BYU beating Illinois. First of all, conference tournament success doesn't always translate to deep runs in the NCAA tournament. Secondly, Illinois this year, hasn't exactly been good defensively. They have the personnel and the length, but I just think with that 5-out offense, the way BYU can shoot, spread you out, drive the basketball, score in the paint, the way that their offense operates, unless they're just, of course, there's a possibility that BYU just has an off night and maybe gets picked off earlier than I think. But they're kind of my team in this region. I think people are sleeping on a little bit. Their first year in the Big 12, they had a great year. They can shoot really the heck out of the ball. And I think they're a little better defensively and more prepared, more well rested coming into this game. So I'm going to go BYU to beat Illinois, although I would love to see Terrence Shannon Jr. in this Illinois team under Brad Underwood make a deep run. And then Drake and Iowa State. Again, I think Drake has enough to get past Washington State. I just think Iowa State will stop them in their tracks with their defense. And Tamin Lipsey is a guy that can go toe to toe pretty much with Tucker DeVries. So I think Iowa State will advance there. What you got?
All right, for me, it's already tough picks. A lot of interesting matchups. I think if we get Auburn and San Diego State in the second round, like I have it, that's going to be one of the most intriguing games of the entire second round for sure. But I'll start off with Iowa State and Drake. Like you said, Drake is probably the most dangerous 10 seed out of all of them. But I do think Iowa State is a really tough draw. I think I actually am just really high on Iowa State, and I just love how they play. Um, Out of the teams in the Big 12, I feel really comfortable with them making a deep run. Illinois and Duque, I'm going with Illinois for the reasons you just mentioned with Terrence Shannon playing how he's playing. I feel like they're very balanced in terms of being very good offensively and defensively. Obviously, they are, probably better on offense than they are defense, but I just think they'll hold their own defensively more than they get credit for, especially against a team like Duque, who's a little bit undersized. Then Auburn and San Diego State, the one I mentioned, it's tough, but I'm gonna go with Auburn. I think the SEC as a conference is one that I'm pretty high on to do well in the tournament this year. Um, just generally, in San Diego State, I know I know that they're extremely good defensively. They're basically have brought back the same team from last year, but I just there's something about this Auburn team. I just think um, the numbers back it up. The numbers really favor them, and as you said, I think they probably should have been a 3 seed. I think they'll go pretty far in the tournament. UConn and FAU, I think, like you said, UConn is gonna get a pretty favorable matchup in terms of FAU's defense, and they're gonna exploit that. They have the team where they have so many options, so many weapons, and it's not just taking turns. It's team ball. Like they understand angles. They understand how to run good offense, and I guess it's just all credit to their coach Dan Hurley and just that culture that they've got there. It's just all clicking the last couple of years. So going with UConn.
Okay, so we're down to the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight in the top right of your bracket in the East. Emmy Nixon, go ahead and finish it out all the way to the Final Four. Who do you have coming out of the region in the East?
Sweet 16, I've got UConn and Auburn and Illinois and Iowa State taking on each other. I'll start with Illinois and Iowa State. I give the edge to Iowa State here, very slightly, but I think Iowa State's tough-minded unit, and like I said, their defense I think is some of the best out of the entire field when they're on. And I just think they really do run teams off the 3-point line really well as well. I feel like they have a lot of high IQ defenders on their team. They can take high leverage guards from the other team out of the game, like they did to Blackshear from Houston. So I'm going with Iowa State there, and then UConn and Auburn. Um, this is where it gets really tough. I really like this Auburn team, but I just think UConn is. I mean, they're the most complete team in the nation for a reason. They're the number one overall seed and the favorite to win this whole thing because they know how to win close games. They've done it before, and this will be one where I just think when it comes down to it, late in the second half, they're going to execute better.
Okay, so who do you have, UConn or Iowa State going to the Final Four?
I'm going to take the upset and go with Iowa State. I think Iowa State, how they're playing right now, they've got something special there. I really do think, and I don't think it'll be a common pick to have them, or not like one of the most common is what I'm saying. Like they're not the most popular pick to go all the way to the Final Four because of some of the I guess not lack of, but I guess lack of depth offensively. I guess in terms of options, but I think their team can go far in the tournament, kind of in a similar way to San Diego State last year on the strength of their defense.
All right, for me, I've got UConn against San Diego State in the Sweet 16. For me, I just think, as I mentioned before, San Diego State, they could challenge UConn defensively. They could get up into them physically, and maybe disrupt their offensive rhythm a little bit. I like their guards. I think Micah Parrish for them is their X factor, as he's probably their most dynamic guard. I like Darian Trammell, and I like Jaden Lee, but UConn just has the personnel to match up everywhere, and I think they've got as many as 6 or 7 legitimate scoring options, which I don't think San Diego State has. I think San Diego State could give them fits to start out, but I think UConn figures it out and they win that game. Um, Cam Spencer, Alex Caravan, both are sharpshooters from 3. Tristan Newton can do it all. I don't need to repeat myself with UConn. You kind of get the vibe of where I'm going here. And then BYU and Iowa State, a Big 12 tournament rematch, or Big 12 regular season rematch, excuse me, where both these teams played each other close. I do think Iowa State, though, gets it done. I think they have the defensive scheme and the personnel to kind of run BYU off the 3-point line, and they have the guard play along with the coach that I like better than BYU just a little bit. So I do think Iowa State will get to the Elite Eight. To play UConn, it's tough, but I'm going UConn. I've been on the UConn train all year, so I'm going to stick with it. They're the most complete team in the country for a reason. And yes, I get it. It's hard to get back to even the Final Four 2 years in a row. But this UConn team, just look at the numbers, man. They are something else. I like Danny Hurley to get back to the Final Four in Phoenix. We'll see if I have them winning it all again, but I do have them getting back to the Final Four. So with all that being said, you've got Iowa State. I've got UConn. Let's move over to the South. Top right of your bracket, where Houston is the number 1 seed. So top quadrant, Houston, Longwood, Nebraska, A&M, Wisconsin, James Madison, and Duke, Vermont. Who you got?
I've got Houston moving on against Longwood. Pretty self-explanatory there. I'll get into them later. Nebraska and Texas A&M. I think that's a pretty interesting game. I'm taking Nebraska there. I think Nebraska. They've been a solid team in the Big Ten this year, and I think they've been more consistent in terms of just taking care of the basketball, and I think Nebraska will get the edge there, and I'm more confident in them to execute down the stretch of a close game. And these 8-9 matchups is normally just a coin flip anyway. Uh, Wisconsin and James Madison. Um, this is an interesting one, and like you mentioned earlier, you know, uh, success in your conference tournament doesn't mean you'll have success in the tournament, March Madness. But Wisconsin is an interesting one. They beat Purdue in the semifinal for the Big Ten. I don't think they won the Big Ten though, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't actually see the result of that game. But man, I think I'll go with Wisconsin there. But this is one where I could see them getting upset. I think they just matched up really well with Purdue. Obviously, they're playing much better here lately, and they've gotten hot at the right time. But I definitely could see an upset in that game. Duke and Vermont. I'm taking Duke. Pretty self-explanatory. I think I don't know much about some of these lower seeds, so I'm not gonna ramble on stuff I don't know about. So I'm just gonna go with my gut on those types of games. So going with Duke. NC State and Texas Tech. This is one where I'm going to take the upset, or would it? I don't know. I'm not actually sure if it. Well, I guess it would be the upset, NC State. But I just think with how physical the Big 12 was, and this year they were the best conference. There's no question about it. But these teams come into the tournament just completely battered up. And you see a lot of these teams on their injury report. You see, like tweaks and different stuff like that to the key players. And Texas Tech is no different, and that's where I kind of have cause for concern. Um, and then, wait, I was just doing the top half, right?
Just keep going. You're on a roll.
Okay,
Keep
yeah.
going.
Kentucky and Oakland. Going with Kentucky.
Okay, what about the last two games? Florida.
Okay, yeah. Right. Okay. Um, Florida and Boise State and Colorado. We don't. It's tough because we don't know who's going to be in that game yet. But I actually am inclined to pick whoever wins that Boise State Colorado game, especially if it's Boise State. They came out of a Mountain West conference that was extremely competitive. Obviously, the SEC is tough as well, but I think Boise State is a really good team, and I think probably could have been in the 8, 9, or 7 slot. And then Marquette and Western Kentucky, taking Marquette.
Okay, so like it. I like it. So for me, I'm going to go a little bit out of order here, but it'll go a lot faster. I got Houston beating Longwood. Again, I think Houston's kind of upset proof to a certain extent. I think their physicality, Jamal Shed, those guards, LJ Cryer, as long as he's making shots, I think they're upset proof. Love the way that Kelvin Sampson coaches, and I could go on my Houston rant right now, but despite of some of the offensive concerns that people still seem to have about Houston, despite the fact that this is the first year that they've actually had a All-American guard that can beat you at any time. I don't really get it. I think it's just more stereotype, but whatever. Marquette in Western Kentucky, I have Marquette. I do have some questions about Marquette, given that Tyler Kolek hasn't played in a while with that oblique injury, but he is going to play. Shaka Smart said last night. Don't know how healthy it is or what he'll look like when he's healthy. He could win this whole thing by himself. He's that good, but I will take Marquette to beat Western Kentucky. Nebraska A&M, I mean, hell, you could legitimately flip a coin. I've been very impressed, I will say, by not only Nebraska with what they've been able to accomplish this year in the Big Ten, as you said, but the way that Texas A&M has kind of gotten itself off the map. Look, I know we want to bang on the Aggies because we're Texas fans, but you have to give them some respect. They under Buzz Williams with the guard play that they have, they really made a run here in the last 3 weeks. And you look at their resume, they have 7 quad one wins. So they're used to playing the top competition. Although they do have those 3 quad 3 losses, the SEC is one of the best conferences. I do think if Tyrese Radford and goodness, why am I all of a sudden blanking on his name? The other guard get hot. A&M could actually be a really interesting matchup for Houston, given the way that they can score. But I will take Nebraska to win that game. I think they're a little better and more consistent defensively. I'm actually taking the James Madison Wisconsin upset. Look, AJ Store's a dog for Wisconsin. They've got some guys that can shoot. They're very well coached. I don't think, given the run that Wisconsin made in the Big Ten tournament, where they got to the finals, to the championship game, and lost to Illinois, I don't think the committee did them any favors. But at the same time, they did go kind of on a losing streak there mid-season, which kind of really hurt them. After at one point they were ranked as high as number 6 in the country. They're really good, but just because you're really good doesn't mean you can't lose in the tournament. And James Madison has been one of the best mid-majors all year. They went 31-3, 15-3 in the Sun Belt. They're a veteran-laden team with offensive weapons all over the place. Terrence Edwards Jr. is an absolute bucket. And I think that James Madison will find a way to win that game. Duke in Vermont. Vermont could give Duke some problems, but I will take Duke just because of their overall talent. Texas Tech and NC State, again, don't love this draw for Texas Tech, given that the way NC State's playing as of late. I do think momentum matters. And DJ Burns on the interior, I don't know if you've seen him. He looks like he could play defensive line for a lot of the teams in the ACC, and he's an absolute bucket and hard to deal with down low. I actually do agree with you here. I do think that NC State, I think their run will run out eventually because they weren't expected to be here, but I do think they have one more in them. I do think they'll carry some of that momentum over, and they will beat Texas Tech. Plus, I just fucking hate Texas Tech, so fuck them. Kentucky will beat Oakland. I don't know. You can't name another team in the country that has 2 lottery picks coming off the bench. You just can't. I'll wait until you do. I'll take Kentucky. Florida, here's the difficult one. Florida, Boise State, and Colorado. I think you're absolutely right. Boise State is way underseeded. How in the hell are they in a play-in game when they had 6 quad 1 wins in the Mountain West? It makes zero sense to me. They finished second in the regular season in a conference that got 6 bids for a reason. It doesn't make any sense. I do think Boise State will beat Colorado on Wednesday. The interesting part about Florida is they're one of those teams, kind of similar to Kentucky, that can go toe-to-toe with pretty much anybody offensively. Love their guard play, like their talent. But they lost one of their big men to a gruesome injury yesterday. It's horrible. Didn't love to see that. I'm squirmy when it comes to those kinds of things. I think his ankle kind of snapped. It was bleeding. It was ugly. I don't know how Florida's going to respond to that emotionally. So I am going to take Boise State to advance. I do like the Mountain West, as I've said many times. And there's my first round in the South. So second round, go.
Okay. Second round, Houston and Nebraska. Going with Houston. As you said, the guard play is at a different level for Houston this year. I think the offensive stuff, the numbers are better. They're better at shooting this year, and I also just think they play with pace and they move the ball like a lot more crisply than they get credit for as well. Like I think um, there's a lot to like about this team for sure, and you can say what you want about the Iowa State game and the Big 12 tournament. That's one game. I mean, their entire body of work speaks for itself. So going with Houston, James Madison and Duke. By the way, I wanted to mention that after I heard your rant about James Madison, I said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna change my pick," because James Madison, they're. It seems like they're the mid major that's always in the tournament. They're always hanging around. So I was like, yeah, I'll change my pick. There's always one big upset in every region, it feels like, at least in the first round. So had to go with something there, changed it to James Madison. James Madison and Duke. With that being all that being said, though, I'm going with Duke. I think Kyle Filipowski, I think he's poised for a big tournament. Roach, I mean, that Duke team, I think, is dangerous. I could see them coming out of this region, actually. NC State and Kentucky, I think this is where the run ends for NC State. I think the offensive talent that NC State or that Kentucky brings to the table, I think will be too much. And obviously, Kentucky, they're prone for a cold night here or there from three, but they also are just so supremely talented that I think they'll find a way to pull it out. Um, Boise State and Marquette. This one, I think, is another interesting one. Boise State, as you said, they have a lot of quality wins. They're not a team that Marquette can take lightly. Definitely not. With that being said, though, Marquette has one of the best guards in the country, in Tyler Kolek, and that's one of the boxes you have to have checked in the tournament if you're going to go far. And I think their inside out game with their big fella, can't remember his name, but
Oso Igidaro.
Igidara. Yep, exactly. I think their inside out game, they're going to get that going, and I'm going to take them to win that game. That's it for the second round.
Perfect. For me, I'll take Houston over Nebraska. Just think again, their physicality, defensively, the way that they trap ball screens, it'll overwhelm Nebraska a little bit. I do think Nebraska can keep that game close. They've been a scrappy team all year long. And you never know with Houston. Like sometimes they do go cold offensively, although I think some of the offensive struggles are kind of overplayed a little bit. But I will take
sure.
I will take Houston there. I think Emmanuel Sharp has been huge for them, just the way he's been able to shoot and knock down shots. LJ Cryer, if he gets hot, I think that's really the turnkey for Houston. The only thing I will say, and I think it kind of hurt Houston in their Big 12 tournament run, is Jawan Roberts hasn't really looked like himself lately. He might be dealing with a minor injury. I do think these couple days off will really help him. And as long as it's not serious, I'm not too worried. But it could come into play, especially later on when he has to match up against, say, a Kyle Filipowski, because I do have Duke beating James Madison in the Sweet 16. I think the way that Jared McCain has played this year as a freshman, I don't really consider him even a freshman anymore. I mean, of course, the games in terms of the amount of pressure that's on you to perform gets higher and higher. But I think he's one of those kids who he has it. He understands it. And when you pair Jared McCain with Jeremy Roach, who's an experienced guard, great defensively, Kyle Filipowski, and the energy that Mark Mitchell brings, I do like Duke just to overwhelm James Madison in terms of their talent. And then down below, I think NC State's time will expire, although they did make a great run. Kentucky has too much. You can say Kentucky, just in terms of the teams on the top four seed lines, probably has, in terms of this tournament, the highest ceiling, possibly outside of UConn, and the lowest floor because of some of their defensive struggles and some of their inexperience. But I actually think losing earlier on in the SEC tournament to Mississippi State and not making a deep run in that tournament helps Kentucky in this situation for a variety of different reasons, just psychologically. And then I will have who do I have? Boise State and Marquette. I will have Marquette winning that game. Although I do really like Tyson Dagenhart for Boise State. He can really score the ball. I'll just go ahead and finish out the South. We are going on an hour, so we might reformat some things, but we'll get to that in a minute. For me, Houston and Duke is really interesting. I think Duke has maybe not as high of the ceiling as, say, a Kentucky or a UConn or some of these other teams, maybe not even in North Carolina. But I do think they have a really low floor. I think they're one of those teams that you can kind of trust, especially the fact that I kind of like their draw up until, of course, this game. I think you can kind of trust that they'll be in the second weekend. That's just my opinion, though. This is so tough because Houston has been there, done that. This is kind of a new Duke team. But I don't know. It's been a long time since actually all four number one seeds have got to the second weekend. Just a nugget that I'll throw in there. It's been since 2019 since all four number one seeds have gotten to the second weekend. That's interesting. This would be in the Sweet 16. I don't know. I kind of want to pick Duke. I think if I don't pick Duke here, I might pick Houston to lose in the Elite Eight, despite how high I've been on them all season long. It's just it never works out the way you think it's going to. I will pick Houston, and then I'll take actually Kentucky to beat Marquette, and then I'll take Kentucky with their offensive ceiling, how they can spread you out, their talent. I think there's a lot of pressure on Coach Cal. They're out for blood in this tournament, and I think they'll get it done. They have enough scoring punch where I think they only need to have a couple good 4-minute stretches of defense each game to win. I do worry about their experience. I do worry about Reed Shepard potentially going cold, but I just think they have so many options. They've got two potential lottery picks coming off their bench. I'm really bullish on Kentucky. Again, could look foolish, but if there's one team that could really get it going, it's Kentucky. And they're going to be one of my surprise picks, I guess you could call it, to make the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, looking foolish is just part of it. Every year, there's always going to be that one team that makes you look foolish. That's how it always is. But yeah, Kentucky. There's definitely a lot of reason to be extremely high on them. We ended up with the same Sweet 16 here, but I am going to go in the other direction. I'm going to take Duke. Not because I'm low on Houston or anything, but I just think Duke is a really good team, and I think they match up well with Houston. Their ability to spread the floor with Filipowski at one of the big slots, I think that's a key factor. You can spread them out a little bit if you can kind of make Houston make long rotations. If you can get them in rotation with how they attack high pick and roll and high ball screens, you end up with 4-on-3s with a guy rolling in the middle of the floor. And I think Duke can take advantage of that. I think they have the talent to be able to do that, and they have the shooting as well to be able to take advantage of some of those long closeouts they're going to force. Kentucky and Marquette. I got to be honest. I have no clue who I'm gonna pick. Like sitting here right this second, no fucking clue. Um, but you know what? I like a lot of the points you made on Kentucky, so I hope you're right. I'm gonna go with Kentucky. Screw it. Um, then now Duke and Kentucky for me, and then I think you have Houston and Kentucky. You said you take Kentucky. Hmm. I think I'm gonna take Duke.
Fair enough.
I feel really good about this Duke team this year. I'll just leave it at that. I think I don't know. I have a gut feeling about them.
Fair enough. There's been a lot of people who have come out and said that they thought UConn really got screwed as the number one overall seed with their
They got
region.
a tough draw, man.
They got a tough draw, but I think people are overplaying that. Like, yes, Auburn would be a really tough test in the Sweet 16, but Auburn's got to get there first. Like, as I
True.
mentioned,
Yeah.
Yale's not going to be easy. And then you potentially got to face San Diego State. That's not easy. Iowa State's good. Illinois is really good. But I think I'd make the argument that Houston's draw, just in terms of the 2, 3, and 4 seeds in their region, is actually tougher.
Okay.
Kentucky,
Yeah.
their upside is higher than anybody else. I think in the East region, I think Marquette, if Tyler Kolek's healthy, could win. As I mentioned, I think they could at least get to the Final Four, if not the national championship game, with their versatility. And I think Duke, I mean, I just said it, they've got a really, really low floor or high floor and a pretty high ceiling as well, although it's probably not the highest. So I don't know. That's the South. So we've got some options here. Of course, I probably shouldn't have gone on my 8-minute rant to start the podcast on the Big
Nah, that's
East.
fine. Nah, I
But I
mean,
had I had to
it's our
get
podcast. At the end of the day, we get to talk about what we want to talk about. So
I had to get
it
it
is
off
what it
my
is.
chest. We're just gonna keep going.
Yeah.
As long
Yeah.
as you're
Fuck it.
okay with it.
Let's keep this going, man.
So let's go down to the West. And I'll let you start off. So go from Carolina to Alabama, Charleston to start us off.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. North Carolina. I'm taking them to win. I don't see any of the one seeds losing in the first round this year, or in the second round either. To be honest. Um, Mississippi State and Michigan State. That's an interesting one. I really like Jeffries, the guard from Mississippi State. He's a dog, man. He will hound any opposing guard scorer that you put him on. They're due for an off night. I mean, he's long and athletic. He's one of my favorite players in the country. Really underrated. With that being said, though, Mississippi State they have trouble offensively, and in the tournament, if you struggle to score, that really makes you vulnerable because when you're playing against a high-powered offensive team, March Madness is already, due to have those huge momentum swings anyway, but when you struggle to score, it's hard to punch back when you get punched. So, going with Michigan State there. Um, St. Mary's and Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon, of course, upset Arizona. Was it last year or 2 years ago? I think it was last year. But this year, I think St. Mary's. I think they're. I think they're a really, really good team that I think could make a really solid run in the tournament here this year. Um, Alabama and Charleston. Charleston is not going to be easy for Alabama, but I am going to take them to win in a close one. I think this is one of those games that um, between a 4 and a 13 that you could see being really tight late because of Alabama's struggles defensively from time to time. But I am going to take them to pull it out. Um, then, I went too far, didn't I?
No,
Oops.
you're good. You're good. Um,
Clemson and New Mexico. This one, I'm gonna go with New Mexico. Again, no, this one's no reason other than gut feel, and I also just with how highly you've been on the Midwest, that's just kind of some of that's kind of transferred over to me as well by default. Just I've read up on them. I'm kind of aware of all those teams now. Um, so New Mexico, I think, will pull that game out in a close one. Then Baylor and Colgate, taking Baylor.
okay. So in terms of this region, I have the number 1 and number 2 seeds advancing. I've got Arizona beating Long Beach State, and I've got North Carolina beating Howard or Wagner. Both of those teams, I think, making one of those teams is making their first ever appearance in the tournament. Good for those 16 seeds, man. Anything can happen, but I'm really high on North Carolina. Maybe you'll see that later on. I have Arizona beating Long Beach State. Arizona screwed me in the past. I'll talk about them more in depth here in a little bit. In terms of that 8-9, it's a really interesting game. Michigan State, obviously, to be honest with you, I think they were overseeded. I don't think they deserved a 9 seed. A 19-14 Michigan State team that had a couple losses outside of quad 1 and quad 2. I just didn't see it. I think they should have been more like a 10 or 11. Maybe even a team that instead of like a team like Boise State or Colorado State, who I think were more deserving coming out of the Mountain West, I think they should have maybe even been in the first 4. But that's just my opinion. It's going to be close. And I will say this, if this game comes down to the last 4 minutes, I do trust Tom Izzo and this team that has experience to probably pull the game out. But I'm going Mississippi State here. I'm going with the Bulldogs. I think, as you mentioned, I like yourself. I'm pretty high on the SEC. Not so, not that I'm low on the Big Ten. I'm just not as high on the Big Ten. And I think Mississippi State, first of all, they defend at a top 25 level in the country. They're top 25 on KenPom and defensive efficiency. They have length. They have depth. They have solid numbers and metrics offensively. They do have a big man in Tolu Smith, 6'11", 245 pounds, who demands a lot of double teams, and I think that could pose some issues on the inside for Michigan State. And I do think their freshman sensation, Josh Hubbard, who's kind of small, but he's got limitless range and no fear. And he's got a crafty mid-range game. I think those two players in the pick and roll, working the high-low game, could give Michigan State some issues. The thing about Mississippi State is outside of Josh Hubbard and Jeffries, everybody else really struggles to shoot from the perimeter. And you give Tom Izzo time to game plan that, it could be difficult. I just think with under Chris Jans coming off a hot finish to the season, not only in the SEC tournament where they dismantled Tennessee, but just a really nice year in the SEC. I think they will get it done against Michigan State. I just have a weird feeling. St. Mary's with their physicality and defense. Grand Canyon's a really good program. They've been here and done that before as similar seed, but I think St. Mary's too experienced and really physical, good defensive rebounding team will get the job done. Alabama and Charleston, I've gone back and forth on this one. Charleston, really, really good offensively. They could challenge Alabama a little bit, especially defensively. Alabama has been really deficient defensively, but I do think with Matt or Sears, the point guard, who I think should be an All-American, averaging over 20 points per game in this league, Alabama will find a way to win that game.
Yeah, I think that one might come down to who hits the glass. That might be
Yeah.
the rebounding battle.
I do have New Mexico beating Clemson. Clemson getting a 6 seed makes no sense to me, but that's that for another day. I'll get more into New Mexico later. Baylor and Colgate. Remember, as Texas fans, to start off that run last year, they had to play Colgate. Colgate is experienced. Uh, they run their stuff. You're not going to really phase them. I do worry about Baylor defensively, but Baylor has the requisite athleticism and length to just overwhelm a team like Colgate. So I will take Baylor there, setting up a really interesting matchup between New Mexico and Baylor in the second round. Uh, as I mentioned before, I think Dayton was overseeded. Really like Deron Holmes, as I mentioned on previous podcasts. But outside of that, I like Nevada's team a whole lot better. And as I mentioned, I'm high on the Mountain West. So I'll take Nevada to win that game as the 10, and they'll face Arizona. So for my second round, let's just go through this real fast. I've got Mississippi State giving North Carolina a game with the way that they defend, but North Carolina just too good. They've got way more scoring options, and I like their guard play better. R.J. Davis, legitimate first or second team All American. He led them to the ACC championship game where they just got stumped a little bit by NC State. But I think that high-low game with Baycott has accepted more of a all-around role for this team. And those transfers, Harrison Ingram, experience, Cormac Ryan can knock down a shot when you want him to. Elliot Cadeau is that kind of pass-first point guard that this team needed, as opposed to a guy like Caleb Love, where there was two guys fighting for one ball in one shot. I think this North Carolina team will beat Mississippi State, although both those teams could give them a little bit of trouble. I will admit that. I like of all the 8-9 draws that I have on this bracket, there's an argument to be made that Carolina maybe got the toughest second round, in my opinion. I do think St. Mary's playing Alabama. I trust St. Mary's more. Alabama can go cold shooting, and playing against that St. Mary's defense, not easy. I will take St. Mary's to win in a close game. Baylor, New Mexico. This could be one of the better games of the tournament. I think New Mexico is really good. They won the Mountain West tournament. Again, it doesn't always translate to deep runs in the NCAA tournament, but it can in certain instances. And I think if there's one instance where it might be New Mexico. They've got three really, really good guards that can match up and go toe-to-toe with Baylor's guards. I do not trust Baylor defensively. Again, I like Scott Drew, but I'm going the upset there. And I'm a huge advocate of the Big 12, but I'm going the upset there. New Mexico to pull that upset. And then I'll take Arizona to beat Nevada. What about you?
All right, for me, I'll go backwards here. Nevada and Arizona. I'm taking the upset right there. I'm taking Nevada. I think it's pretty clear, like how I feel about the Mountain West with how I'm picking these. But man, I just think I don't know. I have a weird feeling about Arizona. They have been really good for the entirety of this year. They've been on the 1 and 2 line, hovering there. But just have a weird feeling about that one. New Mexico and Baylor. So here's the thing. I think between Nevada and Arizona and New Mexico and Baylor, I do think if those matchups were to play out, I think one of those games would be an upset, but I don't think both of them would. But for the sake of my bracket, I'm just gonna say screw it and go all in on the Mountain West. I'm taking New Mexico. St. Mary's in Alabama, I'm right there with you, man. I think St. Mary's, their defense, I think matches up really well with Alabama's style of play. taking St. Mary's there, and then North Carolina and Michigan State. And you know what? I think I liked your argument in terms of Mississippi State, so I'm going to change my pick to Mississippi State real quick, because I do think they are the better team. But North Carolina, Mississippi State, going with North Carolina, and then taking St. Mary's over Alabama. Moving on to the next round, North Carolina and St. Mary's is a really interesting game. Man, I think I'm with you on being pretty confident in North Carolina. I just love their guard play, and I like that they. It just feels like every kind of archetype you want on a team, North Carolina has that. Like a scoring guard, a facilitating guard, a strong big in the paint that's going to dominate the paint, rebound at a high level, and make tough finishes inside as well. Um, and also hit his free throws, which is a big deal as well. And then forwards who can defend at a high level, and then also hit the three ball on the other end. I think they got to put it all together, but they are a really complete team. And I think maybe the losing in the ACC tournament may end up being a good thing. Maybe they just needed a reset. So going with North Carolina there, and uh, New Mexico and Nevada. The more I say it out loud, the more bizarre it sounds. But you know what? We're rolling with it. Taking New Mexico.
Good. I like it. Jamal Mashburn Jr. Love it. Okay, for me, in terms of my Sweet 16, I had North Carolina and St. Mary's. I like North Carolina more offensively. It's just pretty much as simple as that. And if North Carolina gets like decent production off their bench, which they have been getting for the most part, I like them even more. So I like North Carolina. They're out something to prove. I know that's cliche, but they missed the tournament a year ago after being the number one rated preseason team. And so I do think they kind of molded this roster more to fit their style of play, and they defend this year. Like they can, there's a reason North Carolina is where they are at, and that's because of the way that they play defense. And you saw when they went into Cameron Indoor to end the regular season, they really stifled Duke offensively to start that game, and they created that separation. I think North Carolina wins that game, and I don't know that it's particularly close. And then I'll say, so I had New Mexico and Arizona. Man, Arizona has really butt fucked me in the past. And I have PTSD from that. So, with that being said, for no other reason, for no like basketball specific reasons, although I could explain basketball reasons, I will take New Mexico just like yourself. And then I'll take North Carolina, as I've been high on them for pretty much all season, to get to the Final Four for pretty much no other reason than I would love to see a matchup between this North Carolina team and UConn. Holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, and just want to say, like, avoiding a butt fucking seems like pretty good analysis to me. That's all I'm going to say.
I don't want to be butt fucked. No way.
Screw that. Nah. Anyways, does that do it for that region? Are we headed to the Midwest?
Who'd you have in the Final Four? Remind me, out of the West.
Ooh, gotcha.
So you had North Carolina. You had Carolina?
Okay. Yeah.
All right, moving on to our final region, and then we'll round it out with our Final Four and championship picks. So far, I've got UConn, North Carolina, and Kentucky in my Final Four, and you've got Iowa State, Duke, and North Carolina, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so to make this quicker, Purdue will get out of the first round this year. They will win that game.
Yeah.
uh, Tennessee, although St. Peter's was dangerous a couple years ago, Tennessee will beat them, overwhelm them with their physicality and size. Um, Utah State TCU, really interesting. This is your classic offense against defense battle. Utah State winning the Mountain West Conference tournament regular season title, as they were the best team in the regular season. They've got really nice options offensively, and they're a great story. Danny Sprinkle, their head coach, they returned, I think, 0 players from last year. They had to totally remake this roster, and they're really dangerous offensively. TCU, they've got weapons. They got in this tournament based on what they did in the Big 12. Really like Micah Peavy. Really like some of their players. I just think in the tournament, for this game in particular, for no other reason, just based on instinct, I feel like I hate to keep picking the Mountain West over and over, but fuck it.
Mountain West supremacy, baby. Let's go.
I think offense will beat defense 7, 8 times out of 10. So I'll go Utah State. The 5-12 matchup in this region and the 4-13 matchup in this region, this could really be where things kind of go awry, if you ask me. Gonzaga, they have been playing a lot better the past month. I'll give them that. They did lose in the West Coast Conference Tournament Championship against St. Mary's, but they did just beat St. Mary's, I think, in the regular season finale by a decent margin. So I don't put too much stock into that. I think McNeese State is dangerous. They can give Gonzaga some issues, but I think with Graham Ike on the interior, Anton Watson, and then Nimhard as the point guard, I do think Gonzaga will find a way to win. Although I think Buckyball in Sanford.
That's a
Maybe
great
I look.
game.
That's what they call him. His name's Buckyball.
That's sick.
I think Buckyball and Sanford will beat Kansas.
Ooh,
If I if,
okay.
if I look like an
Okay.
idiot, I look like an idiot. But I'm
I
going to go
mean,
down swinging. So look, the bottom line is Kansas is kind of fragmented as a team right now. We don't know the status really of Hunter Dickinson's shoulder, as he kind of dislocated it as recently as, when did that happen? Did that happen in the no, it happened in the regular season finale. I think he's okay, but how is he going to play? And then Kevin McCullough, for basically the past month and a half, 2 months, has been dealing with a nagging knee bone bruise. So I just don't really know how to feel about Kansas. Obviously, their top 4 can match up against anyone when healthy. And if I knew that those players were healthy, I would take Kansas. But Sanford can really score it. And I'm taking Buckyball to pull the upset. And then should I stop there or should I keep going?
um, stop there. I'll go quickly with
Okay.
mine. Purdue. I'm high on Purdue. I said it on our last college basketball podcast. Really high on Purdue. Utah State, TCU. I agree with you there. Offense over defense. Shout out to Mark Jackson. Um, Gonzaga and McNeese. McNeese has been the pretty popular upset pick.
Yeah.
I've got to say, but man, it's tough. My brain is saying Gonzaga, but my gut is saying Nice. Just because, man, I'll go with Gonzaga. I think how they've been playing lately, they've been playing much better. But I do think between Gonzaga and Kansas, one of them is going down. Like I feel pretty confident in that. Um, Kansas and Samford, I think I'm gonna side with you, man. Like I think I'm gonna take Samford. Kansas has been a team that like we've been questioning their depth all year long. So them dealing with injuries, it's significant. It really is. I mean, they have that kid from Australia that's been giving them really good production. But outside of that, off the bench, there's not really much there. Um, so I'm taking Sanford. South Carolina, Oregon, taking South Carolina. And then Creighton. Wait, yeah, Creighton and Akron, taking Creighton. UVA, Colorado State, and Texas, taking Texas. Um, and then Tennessee and St. Peter's. Give me Tennessee.
Okay, so real quick on Stanford. If you have time between now and when the tournament starts on actually the tournament technically starts tomorrow, but I don't really count the first 4 games. Do you? I mean,
Yeah, I don't really count them either.
so the tournament will start Thursday as it always does. 16 games Thursday, 16 games Friday. It's one of the best weekends in sports where you get the madness really playing out in the first weekend, and then we kind of boil it down to, okay, who are actually the best teams, who deserves to make a run at a national championship, more so in the Sweet 16, Elite 8, and Final Four. But real quick on Stanford, if you don't have time or if you have like 5 minutes, read a little bit up on Bucky McMillan in this Stanford team. That's where the name Bucky Ball comes from. And Bucky Ball refers to a style that Bucky McMillan instills in his team, where they're one of those teams. Like, remember the Shaka Smart teams at VCU?
Oh, like
The full court
court
press?
press.
Yeah, Sanford does
Ooh, okay,
exactly
yeah.
that. Stanford does exactly that. They shoot a lot of threes. They're good at shooting them, and they have a deep rotation. I really like Stanford. They are dangerous, if you ask me. And they have a forward whose name is Akor. I think is how you pronounce it. Akor. They're a team full of names and fun and everything. But South Carolina, Oregon, I'll take South Carolina, although I do think Oregon could upset them. Creighton and Akron, really like Akron out of the MAC, but I'll take Creighton. I think Creighton's really dangerous, as they were last year when they made a run to the Elite Eight and fell just short against, I believe was it San Diego State or FAU? I think it was San Diego State who beat them. I'll take Texas, although I am praying that we get to play Virginia.
Yeah.
I to be honest with you, I think if it's Colorado State, that worries me a little bit. I think with Colorado State's guard play, they could give Texas sketchy defense a little bit of trouble. And although Isaiah Stevens against Max Abmas could be one hell of a.
Oh yeah, that'll be a battle for sure.
But either way, I think I'm going to take Texas. If Texas gets B plus games from Max Abmas and Dylan DeSue, they will win at least a game in the tournament and maybe more. Because they have on paper, they have the talent to do it. I'll talk more about that tomorrow. Tennessee will beat St. Peter's. Let me just keep going here. I like Purdue to beat Utah State. Zach Edey's a monster. I think this is the year that Purdue will make a deeper run. I do agree with that. And then between Stanford and Gonzaga, fuck this. Go with Bucky Ball. Bucky Ball advances.
Hell yeah.
That sounds so retarded, but whatever. South Carolina and Creighton, go with Creighton. Love their ceiling, and I think, look, they don't foul. They play defense and they don't foul. And Ryan Kalkbrenner is an absolute monster on the interior. Love Creighton. They're a Final Four sleeper. I don't know if you can call them a sleeper. They're a team that could reach the Final Four as a 3 seed. Like, if it's not going to be Kentucky as a 3 seed that makes the Final Four, I think it'll be Creighton. Because I do like their draw. And then
I think if their cards fall right, they're a team that could win it all. Personally,
yeah, the Rick Barnes Bowl, Texas and Tennessee. Who would have thought? Look, quick note, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but when they came out and they had Texas A&M as a 9 seed, I for sure thought with Texas A&M being overseeded, as I kind of explained earlier, I thought they might just put Texas in that 8 spot and match those two teams up. They almost did it last year, remember, when Texas
Yeah, for the second round.
could have faced A&M
Right.
in the second round, but A&M dropped the ball against Penn State. I thought that was going to happen, but they went with the Rodney Terry, Rick Barnes matchup, which I like. I just don't think Texas will be able to stop Dalton Connect.
Yeah, he scares me.
He's good.
Yeah.
You guys haven't noticed. So, look, I'm a Texas fan. I'd love for Texas to get back to the Sweet 16 for the second year in a row, but we've seen like bigger, more physical teams like Houston, like Iowa State, like Baylor, like UConn really give this Texas team trouble. So I'll take Tennessee there. And then I'll just finish it up here. Purdue and Samford, Purdue. I think Purdue got a pretty favorable draw, to be honest with you, especially with that upper half of the bracket. I don't really see a team that matches up at all with Zach Edey, unless I'm wrong and Kansas is healthy and they have a healthy playing at 100% Hunter Dickinson. That's the only way I don't see Purdue making at least the Elite Eight. So I'll take Purdue to get to the Elite Eight. And then Tennessee and Creighton. This is tough. I think the way Creighton defends without fouling could give Tennessee some problems. And Kalkbrenner's a monster on the interior. But at the same time, Dalton Connect is one of those guys. He's one of like 6 or 7 guys in this tournament that if he gets hot for 3 weeks, could win this tournament by himself. I'm telling you. Baylor Shireman, though, has been playing really nicely for Creighton. This is a tough game. Holy cow. Let me think on it. Why don't you go through your second round, and then I'll come back with the pick.
All right. Yeah. My second round, Purdue and Utah State. Taking Purdue. Gonzaga and Samford. I think I'm gonna go against the Bucky ball. Just like I know it's disappointing, but I mean, just I like Nemhard. I like that Gonzaga team. Even though there
Fair
were
enough.
points in the season
Fair enough.
where they were looking kind of you know.
Fair
But
enough.
South
It is.
Carolina,
It
Creighton,
is. It is Mark Few. At
yeah,
the end of
yeah,
the day, it is Mark Few.
yeah. Mark Few has been pretty consistent in the tournament. South Carolina, Creighton, taking Creighton, and then Tennessee and Texas, taking Tennessee, and I think Dalton Connect is going to score like 80% of their points because that's what it feels like he's been doing. And then next round, where is it?
So
Where is it?
who do you have? Purdue or
Oh yeah,
Gonzaga?
Purdue and Gonzaga, Creighton and Tennessee. I'm taking Purdue against Gonzaga. I think Braden Smith and Zach Edey. I think that duo is really just potent, man. I think Braden Smith, him coming around on those ball screens, they like to run those actions where they screen the screener or they screen the pick and roll bigs man, and those actions like you just get lost, and Braden Smith ends up with an open look seemingly every time. Um, I also I like their guard play in general. Now they got that transfer Jones. He's been really good for them.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm high on the Purdue team. I've made that pretty clear before. I keep on saying it. I know it's kind of repetitive. Now for the fun part, Creighton in Tennessee. I think I'm gonna go Tennessee.
Yeah, I'll go Tennessee too. I think this is the year that both this is kind of for me, this is kind of like the redemption bracket. Like we've got Texas who could make a run. They fell just short of the Final Four last year. If things break their way and they get their best players playing well, they could get back to the Elite Eight and maybe a Final Four. I don't see it happening, but there is like that small chance that it does happen.
Yeah.
Tennessee, so many year after year after year in the 6 years under Rick Barnes, they failed to live up to expectations in the tournament. Same thing with Purdue under Matt Painter. I just have this kind of feel with this bracket. Like Gonzaga's been on the big stage before, yet they haven't really reached the final mountaintop, but they have been consistent in getting to the second weekend. It just like if I were to name these regions, I would name the Midwest something along the lines of the redemption bracket.
Yeah.
Something
And
like
then
that.
I've heard people call Tennessee and Purdue the underachievement bowl.
I actually love that. That's awesome. But in terms of that game, look, I mean, it would be dominant big against dominant guard.
Yep.
Who are you going to take? And I don't know, man. Something about me doesn't want to match up Tennessee and Kentucky in the Final Four.
Yeah.
So I'll take Purdue.
Yeah, that feels a bit college football ish.
Yeah.
Two
I,
SEC teams
I'll
in the
take Purdue. Look, I haven't been as high on Purdue as you have been, but I mean we're splitting hairs, and I think their draw could end up being fairly favorable. And I don't think anybody in this region matches up with Zach Edey, except for maybe Ryan Kalkbrenner. Like
yeah.
got the best chance if Creighton.
That would be, dude. I didn't think about that, but that would be such a fire big on big. I was gonna say big on big action, but that sounds crazy.
Oh man, we're getting spicy as we
Are we
get
watching
down.
basketball or a porno?
I mean,
Who
hell,
knows? Who cares?
with some of these games, with how good they could be, it would be basketball porno.
I
It would.
mean, the worlds are colliding, man.
Yeah. I mean, they just banned Pornhub in Texas. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Okay, so we have our Final Four. I feel kind of bad putting 3 number 1 seeds in the Final Four, but here's a note, guys. We reserve the right to change our picks in our Final Four up until Wednesday evening. We'll have up until Wednesday evening at midnight, where early Thursday morning on our Raw Prospect Twitter, we're each going to tweet out our official Final Four and final national champion in case we change our minds between here and then. It's only Monday. So we do reserve the right to change these picks. But for the sake of the podcast, I do have 3 number 1 seeds in my Final Four with Purdue, North Carolina, and UConn. And I'm dying to see, as I said, that North Carolina-UConn matchup. And then I have Kentucky. So let's start off with you. On the left side of the bracket, you've got Iowa State and you've got, I believe, North Carolina. Who do you have advancing to the national championship game?
I've got North Carolina advancing to the national championship. I think RJ Davis. I just realized that Duke and North Carolina is a possibility as a national championship in my bracket.
Yes!
Holy shit. That would be insanity. Anyways, RJ Davis. I don't know, man. I think out of all the guards in the country, I just love his game, man. Like he's got that little floater game. He can get all the way to the rim, finish through contact. He's got that jumper, obviously. He's a microwave scorer, and those kind of guys in the tournament. I wish there was like a saying for like dudes who are like tournament made, like they're just It's like in their blood. Like you can see like in their play type, like they're microwave scorers. There's always those type of players in the tournament every year that get their teams far. Like Dalton Connect type or RJ Davis.
Yeah, absolutely right. For me, UConn and North Carolina. Wow, I don't even know what to say about this game.
Oh,
RJ Davis against Tristan Newton. Um, Armando Bacot against Donovan Clingan. Um, Harrison Ingram against Cam Spencer or Stephon Castle. But I'm riding the Husky Express all the way. And then on my other side, I've got Kentucky and Purdue. Wow. I will take Purdue.
Okay. Interesting.
I don't feel great about it, but I'll take Purdue for now.
Okay. Yeah. I've got Duke against Purdue. Against like big like Zach.
Dude,
You know what?
North Carolina,
I'm gonna do it. Fuck it. I'm taking Duke. I don't know why.
Yes,
but I'm taking Duke.
Yes!
Duke in North Carolina in the championship game. Let's fucking do it.
Oh my gosh!
Unleash the chaos.
What an episode! I've got UConn cutting down the nets. First team to repeat since Florida 2006-2007. That team with Joakim Noah. The list goes on and on. I think UConn. I just think they're too deep and too balanced. To be honest with you, I would be rooting for North Carolina to win that game in the semifinal. I don't know. I probably have no rooting interest in Kentucky Purdue, but part of me does want Zach Edey on his way out. He's actually not going to be back next season, folks. Despite some of the funny jokes that are made about how long Zach Edey has been at Purdue.
Yeah, it's like the Ben Simmons Rookie of the Year joke.
I do want him to get at least to the mountaintop of being able to play on the biggest stage because he's been like kind of like a generational college basketball player. He's going to be one of the first players to win the Player of the Year award more than once since like Ralph Sampson, I believe. I think it could be a story kind of like Virginia in 2019 where they had a horrific upset the year before and they find a way to galvanize and they get at least to the Final Four, I think. But I do think UConn, as I've been saying all year, and I'll stick to my guns, I got UConn winning the national championship. I might change some of the other things in my bracket, but I will not change UConn. And if they get upset, well, I'll die on the hill of counting on the best team in the country up until this point. So who do you have winning?
I think if there were anything I were to change, I would probably change that UConn Iowa State game. But
don't let me influence you. But
it's just tough. It's tough to pick against UConn with how good they've been,
Yeah. So who do you have? You've got Duke and North Carolina.
Yeah, Duke and North Carolina.
Does North Carolina beat them 3 times in a season?
No, I'm taking Duke.
Oh! Wow.
Dookie.
I don't like Duke, but I like that. I mean, I like the way that you're thinking there. It is hard to beat. You remember, what was it, 2 years ago where these teams matched up in the Final Four and North Carolina basically ended Coach K. And maybe Duke gets their revenge. And new coach, John Shire, says fuck you to Hubert Davis. Yeah. That's the end of the story. And then they go their separate ways and they start rebuilding their teams for next year. Yep. Okay. Look, this was an hour 45 minutes. But I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. I mean,
It is March
that was
Madness.
really fun, dude. Like, I feel like the humor really came out like right around like the hour mark.
Yep.
Um,
We've got big time jokes. Big time jokes. I could have gone so much more inappropriate with some of the other jokes that I've heard on different various podcasts since the bracket came out last night, but I don't want to get us kicked off the channel. So, yeah. Any parting shots?
Parting shot is Scotty Scheffler is really, really freaking good at golf.
Yes,
Dropped
he is.
64 in the final round,
He is.
and it looked pretty easy while doing it. He probably could have shot 62 if he had just made like 2 4-footers, but we're not going to talk about that. The other one is shout out to Shannon Sharp, because I don't think I have ever laughed as hard as I did the other day when I saw this clip of him and Ocho, and I don't know how this subject came up, but Ocho was like, "Yo, bro, do you last though?" And Shannon was like, no,
What?
if you got that, if she got that, ooh wee, I'm a TMB,
Oh my
I'm a
god.
touch and bust. Yeah, that shit got me dying. But yeah, that what's it called? Nightcap, that podcast, so freaking funny.
Shout out to Shannon Sharp, but for a different reason. I don't even know what to think about this.
Yeah, sorry, that was really random, but it popped in my head.
So today on First Take, him and Stephen A were doing their brackets. I mean, what do these guys know about college basketball? But Shannon Sharp, they put a graphic up on Twitter. They filled out their men's and women's brackets. And for his final four, he had 8 number 1 seeds, all 8 of them in the final four. And then he had a 1 seed winning in each. Have we ever seen that? Have we ever seen 4 number 1 seeds in the men's and 4 number 1 seeds in the women's? Like, I'm genuinely asking. I'd have to research that.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it's for a while it was pretty common in women's.
Yeah,
but
I could see it way more on the women's side than I could on the men's. I just thought that was funny because typically when you're filling out a bracket, you pick some upsets and you don't necessarily pick all favorites. But hey, shout out to Shannon for being contrarian. I didn't see Stephen A's picks. I would be interested to see his picks. Shout out to Stephen A though. He recently did his podcast in Austin at South by Southwest, where he had Steve Sarkisian and Xavier Worthy on the show. I've yet to watch it. I just know it happened. And so sometime this week, I'm going to be watching that because this was post-combine. And, of course, Xavier Worthy broke the all-time speed record at the combine with his 40-yard dash time. And then shout out to Scotty Scheffler, fellow Longhorn, playing really good golf right now, right in time for that tournament at Augusta National. Yep. Tomorrow. I don't know what Emmy's scheduled yet. I haven't talked to him about it. We do have now scheduled times where we're going to be recording podcasts together. Wednesday will be a bunch of baseball stuff. Hope you guys are ready for that. We had news go down earlier that Blake Snell finally signing with the team, 2 years, $62 million with the Giants. That's interesting for the Giants. But anyways, tomorrow I'm planning to do a dit hole. Tomorrow is the start of spring football for the Texas Longhorns. I've got plenty of topics. I've got plenty relating to the first day of spring football and some other segments that I want to do. I want to get into a conversation about Scotty Scheffler. Where does he in the pantheon of all-time Longhorns in the game of golf? Where is he right now? And where could he get to? Could he be the greatest Longhorn golfer of all time when it's all said and done? Talk a little bit about that. I'll also be telling you who I have in my women's bracket, as Texas finds itself as a 1 seed in the women's bracket. Not sure you guys have seen that yet, but they do have a 1 seed.
Yes,
And
sir.
hint, I might be picking them to go pretty far. And then there are some other interesting conversations around the Texas men's basketball team and the Texas baseball team, which those aren't quite so positive, but we'll get to that. So yeah, it might be a pretty decently packed dit hole. I'll talk to Emmy off the podcast, but tune in for that. I greatly appreciate that. And to everyone who's been here for the last hour, 50 minutes, thank you. Don't go to your bookie and copy our picks. Don't do it. We're just having
You might want to fade them actually.
we're just having fun. I know a lot about college basketball. Obviously, I watch it a lot. Emmy knows a good amount, but he's also
Yeah, I'm more of a casual fan. Like I'll admit
more on the casual side and more in. Not that I'm not an NBA guy, but he's like the NBA guru. Like I'm the college football, college basketball, more diehard. But whatever. Be responsible if you're actually betting on this stuff. I would advise you not to, but if you do, don't bet a lot. I'll just say that. And then we will be back for baseball. If Emmy's not on my dit hole tomorrow, we'll both be back for baseball episodes on Wednesday.
Yep.
And then Sunday evening, maybe Monday sometime. I know we have another NBA episode Monday, but sometime early next week, I do want to do similar to what we did last year, where we recap the first weekend and then kind of reset for the Sweet 16 Elite Eight. Because I think that was good last year. So that's what's going on in the world of the Raw Prospect Podcast. Thank you guys for joining us. Enjoy the madness, and we'll see you next time on the Raw Prospect Podcast. So just like the chances of
Shannon Sharp lasting more than
oh my god, yes. Just like the chances of Shannon Sharp lasting more than however long in bed. We are going, gone. Peace.
peace out. Just had to leave that thought in y'all's minds for tonight.
What a great